The world seems to be all in a rage about the ChatGPT generative AI. It is both surprising and frightening at the same time. Should I be frightened? We already talk to our machines. Genie, turn on the TV. Siri, what is the weather like today? But now, it is easier than ever before to actually converse with our machines and rely on them for answers to our problems. For some, it opens a world of infinite possibilities. For others, it is a dark and dangerous world dominated by machines. To talk about where the world of AI is going and how it will fundamentally change our lives, our globalist today is Dr. Yoon Kim, an AI expert and a central figure behind the development of Siri, the chatbot that started it all.
Bonjour.
Merhaba.
Hallo.
ChatGPT.
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 Hi, I'm Siri.
인공지능은 인간의 지능을 모방해서 인간이 하는 일을 더 신속하고 정확하고 안전하고 자연스럽고 효율적으로 처리할 수 있도록 도와주는 소프트웨어와 하드웨어 기술의 총체입니다.
Welcome, Dr. Kim, to the Globalist.
Thank you for having me. It's great.
Let's dive right in. Now, the world seems to be all in a rage about the ChatGPT generative AI. For the global audience who may or may not know what all the fuss is about, can you explain why this has taken the world by storm?
I think language is such a powerful tool for communication between human beings. And I think ChatGPT could be the first example of a really free-form, general-purpose dialogue that humans can engage AI with. And in terms of the actual technology itself, the innovation itself is not radical, but rather it's based on something called a transformer technology. And so that's the T in GPT.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
The input are inputs and questions and comments by human beings, and the output is the generation of text that the AI model generates.
But that wasn't available before?
I think three things happened. One is the explosion of digital content, especially digital text on the internet. To be able to learn about various concepts, themes, topics, knowledge bases, that just exploded in the past 20 years. Then the next is computing. In order to train these models that look at text and basically learn about statistical patterns of words that come after another, you need a vast amount of computing. And thanks to NVIDIA and the folks that do computing, we've had much cheaper computing costs over the past decade. And last but not least, I think there is also memory and a lot of hardware and a lot of memory chips that are involved in storing these text and other types of inputs and other types of data into models. It has met the right partners at the right time. In this case, it's data and computing. So data, computing, and algorithms, they all came together to form this particular thing called GPT-3 and ChatGPT.
It is still a little mind-boggling. So let's actually apply that and sort of see what it does, what it can do. Now, I asked the ChatGPT, what questions should I ask Dr. Yoon Kim, an AI expert? And in 2 seconds, it gave me 10 wonderful questions, which I'm really tempted to use all, but I'll just use number one, which is, how do you see AI evolving over the next 5 to 10 years? And what impact do you think it will have on society? The kind of question I would have asked myself. So that's the first question that ChatGPT said I should ask you.
Excellent. Well, I heard that such a question would be asked. So what I did is I asked ChatGPT the exact same question that you asked, and I let ChatGPT answer it. And first it came back with a pretty long, lengthy answer. So
Which
said,
I don't
okay,
like.
Not really, not for this program. We only have 30 minutes. So I actually asked it to provide a shorter answer. And this is what it provided. I am an AI language model, and I expect to improve my natural language processing abilities, become more specialized in certain areas in the next 5 to 10 years. I believe I can have a positive impact on society by advancing knowledge and understanding in fields such as education, healthcare, and customer service.
So in here, Maya's AI. It is AI talking
Answering
to me.
itself as
It is both surprising and frightening at the same time.
it is. And that aspect, the Jekyll and Hyde and the impressive advancements combined with, hey, this does sound more like a human. And not only just a human, but it sounds more like a very competent human is what actually scares people as well as mesmerizes people.
If AI was that competent, I would feel, I mean, again, when you read out my future, I felt like it was understanding this world and their role in it. It didn't sound like it had any room for me to question its position and what the role it would play in the future.
It's creating a mirage or a concept or a certain type of perception that leads human beings to think, wow, this ChatGPT or this AI seems to understand a lot more. But what it really is basically it's a very well-organized production of words that make a lot of sense that was derived from study and training of all the digital data in English and other languages that have been created. So it does give you extremely plausible, extremely sensible, and in certain cases, extremely innovative and creative responses. However, the current version of the AI doesn't really have understanding.
Where? I mean, if you could give an example of where an AI would not be able to understand.
For instance, if it's based on internet data, but in the process of understanding the question and also providing an answer, fact-finding, making sure the output that it gives is factual, is something that the current AI cannot do that well. For instance, it could say the current president of Korea is Moon Jae-in. And that's not true. It was true at a certain point in time. But the current flavor of ChatGPT was trained on data dating to 2021. And so it does not have recent knowledge around and recent topics that pertain to certain figures, people, places, and events. So that's number one. Number two is that even historical facts can be distorted. And here's the scary part. ChatGPT is so good at producing plausible, grammatically correct, comprehensive answers that you may be able to just believe it. And as a matter of fact, students could just believe it, whereas it's actually not true. Now, for students who really don't know and want to learn, this is a threat and this is a risk. In my opinion, ChatGPT can be much more convincing than a human being in terms of generating such responses.
So it will reflect what it is feeding on.
Correct.
And so if that data is incorrect or biased or just, that will generate more information that makes this fake data or biased data seem true.
Exactly. And also, not just documents and text in its current singular form, but ChatGPT integrates information from multiple thousands and thousands of documents about a certain singular topic. And in the process of integrating knowledge pieces of information into words, it can actually create false information in the combination of such knowledge.
Okay, now I'm scared. Now it sounds frightening. Should I be frightened?
I think there are measures in place, and there are researchers, government institutions, and private institutions, and the entire field is very well aware of this risk and problem. There are a lot of efforts going into making this particular type of AI safe and equitable and fair and just really good for society. Now, every piece of technology that's been developed that's disruptive has this side of being either a Jekyll or a Hyde. In the case of AI, I argue that the extremes are pretty extreme in the sense that if this technology is being used for purposes of benefiting society, then it has immense potential. But if it's used for the opposite set of objectives, then we can be in a lot of trouble. And that's why I think we need cooperation help from the public and private sectors, as well as users who use this technology. We all have a responsibility.
It feels like it's going to change everyone's life in some way or another. We just talked about how, as a reporter, I could ask and generate these questions. I'm also a professor, which is like in a classroom full of young students, and our purpose is to generate knowledge, create a future, and this involves a lot of intelligence exchanges. How is it going to change my role and the role of the students? As
a professor, I would strongly recommend that you get familiarized with ChatGPT and generative AI, and also teach the students, hey, look, it's kind of like a wonderful food that's been made. It tastes so good. It's a new food nobody's ever tasted before. However, if you take too much of this food intake, it's not going to be good for you. So you need to be more mature in digesting what it has to offer. And secondly, you can't just eat this food all the time. You have to combine the food with drinks, with other things to make your life whole and to make you more healthy. So that analogy, it suggests that I think we should treat ChatGPT and generative AI as a very, very powerful tool to help you get things done in a way that's a lot more efficient. However, for your overall learning, that should not be the entire piece. You have to build on how to use ChatGPT to be more creative, how to actually use generative AI so that you can combine images and text, and actually use that to do something a lot better, more creative, and field that is just not readily explored by AI at this point. And we need to help the AI help us, is what I think. So in a way, it frees us up to really focus on something that only we can do. Absolutely. At the same time, in order to make sure that AI and we live harmoniously together and develop together, we have to keep feeding AI the right kind of information so that it can go down this path. And this is where I think the responsibility of the user. Now, we haven't talked about the ethics of users of AI because there aren't many users today. And I think there should also be responsibilities for the users to know what to feed and what not to feed. Because again, garbage in, garbage out. That principle holds in this case as well. And I think if we are to advance this field and really truly make AI beneficial to society, everybody, every actor in this ecosystem has a role to play.
There have been a few setbacks, like the Dark Ages. We now have such heightened expectations that some people feel cheated by politicians and scientists.
Hey Siri!
Hey, the game is all grainy. What's wrong with my TV?
I checked and your internet connection is in order.
So tell us about your involvement with Siri. It's a chatbot that sort of started all this.
It is. And I wasn't involved with the acquisition of Siri, but I heard that Steve Jobs was very interested in acquiring Siri because he thought this was the start of the so-called AI revolution.
Hey Siri, play the song that goes, "Feeling good, never stressed."
Here's Sunday Best by Surfaces.
because again, Siri is a voice-activated assistant.
Yeah.
So it needs speech recognition. So it has to turn on the alarm, turn off the alarm, play music, do things for the user. And I worked on the speech recognition part.
So it's a recognizing the speech and then making decisions about what to do based on what it recognizes.
Exactly. So it's processing audio from the user, understanding its intent, and then acting upon that intent.
But then you left and you joined a Korean company, SK, headed their AI. Now you are part of a venture. How did you make these processes and where are you now?
So when I look back at my career, it was really not planned at all. And so when I was young, I wanted to become a musician, and I thought I was pretty good at it. So I asked my mom and dad, I want to go to Berkeley. And they said, great, son. You see Berkeley is such a great school. And I told them, Mom, Dad, it's actually the other Berkeley School of Music in Boston. And they said, well, son, we don't think you have that much talent in music.
Oh.
So just pursue a career in engineering. We think that's the best for you. And please have music as your hobby. Later, I learned that that was the right decision because that actually motivated me to look at what's the most relevant and closest area in engineering to music. And that happened to be audio. So I majored in audio engineering. I got really intrigued by a certain type of audio. And that was audio generated by human beings, which is speech. So that led me to speech recognition because in the area of speech, sciences and engineering, understanding human speech was the most difficult problem at the time. So I picked the most difficult problem because I thought it was the most intriguing and interesting. And I thought someday we all would speak to computers. And then Apple and Google and Microsoft and other big tech players actually all applied deep learning technology to speech recognition. So that's how I kind of evolved into this AI expert. Now, in terms of work at SKT, I really wanted to help SKT become an AI company. Not just a telecom company, but an AI company because I thought SK Telecom had massive amounts of user data from the use of networks, services, and apps.
Cell phones.
Ranging from TMAP, the mobility application, to content, media, music. And now I'm working for a firm called Sehan Ventures, and we're a boutique firm, but we invest in AI and entertainment companies in Korea and abroad. I want to help companies, and I want to help founders who have ideas and who want to change the world for better. And I want to help them understand this journey and help them along through my expertise in AI and entrepreneurship.
This is where your belief in AI for good comes from.
That's correct. That's correct.
What is that?
So AI for good is that we need to be extremely mindful of why we develop this technology. And in my earlier kind of career, I don't really understand or really wanted to care about why I do what I do. But at Apple, after joining Apple, my first and most major project at Apple was to help with Siri for the Apple Watch. And after Apple Watch was released, I got an email from an Apple retail employee saying that he had a fantastic experience with a customer. So this retail employee discovered that this one father-son duo, the son was elated. He was excited to try the Apple Watches in various forms and shapes and with bands, but the father was a little bit passive. So the Apple retail employee approached the dad and said, hey dad, I mean, you waited this long to try on the Apple Watch. Why are you not trying it and not excited about it? And he said, the father said, well, this Apple Watch I cannot use. And can see, I only have one arm. An Apple Watch, you need to have 2 fingers and 2 hands in order to operate it. And that's a point where the Apple retail employee just had a little eureka moment. And he said, you know, there is something called Siri that will enable you to use your voice with one hand to do a lot of things you can do with your phone. And at that point, according to the retail employee, there were tears running down the father's face. And he told me that they bought 2 watches, one for themselves. And from that point on, that was like 10 years ago, my purpose in life has been, how can I help people who develop technologies for good? And I think AI can be used for the benefit of society. But we have a long way to go in order for AI to be that.
And we have a lot of people that think like you that we need to get more involved in this process.
Absolutely.
The companies you invest in, Sehan, you are investing in a couple of companies that we know. One is Dot.
Correct.
We had the Minister of Small and Media Industries talking about her being very impressed at the Las Vegas show. Are there any other companies that we should keep an eye out on this AI area?
There's one company that we've been helping called Scatter Lab. This company is a company that builds and have developed these foundational models that understand human language, but they've applied it to building AI chatbots that are not like ChatGPT, but rather a different kind. Their objective is to build an AI chatbot that builds personal relationships. So if you draw an analogy that maybe ChatGPT is not personal, but rather the bot is extremely intelligent, kind of like a left brain bot, this is more of a right brain bot in that it caters to a human's desire to converse more with humans, but also converse more in general. And this bot aims to kind of create personal relationships with the user. And it's the largest of its kind in Korea. I think it's the best AI chatbot for conversation in Korean.
So for example, for people elderly, that are people living by themselves who are lonely, they actually, I mean, it's not just a fiction, but they can actually keep them from becoming too lonely?
Correct. I also think, in addition to elderly, Gen Zs, teenagers and young people, really like to engage with machines, and they're very AI native. I am concerned about the lack of conversation between our youngsters and the previous generation. And I think that it's a social problem that a lot of our teenagers are not happy, are not happy about their lives. And I think that bots like these can help improve teenagers be more aware of themselves as well as the society, and actually prevent a lot of bad things from happening in terms of their overall mental health, in terms of communicating with another being.
But they're not communicating with another being. They're communicating with a chatbot. They're communicating with a machine.
Correct.
Isn't that what you don't want them to do?
Actually, we've found that people who interact with human-like AI bots become a lot more interactive and a lot more mature in talking with other human beings. AI bot, especially this one, does not have biases. And so Luda, the name of the bot, it went through some challenges because it had biases in the first version. And with lessons learned, the second version is a lot more ethical, a lot more fair, it's safer. And I think it provides another way for our youngsters to engage digitally. And I have to profess and confess, I don't understand it completely because I am not that generation. To me, speaking with a bot is different than speaking with human beings. And speaking with human beings is different when online versus in person like this. However, I think for our Gen Zs, such distinction is probably a little less, and they can get a lot of flavors of communication that can help become better people.
Finally, now, in the beginning of your career, you found yourself, when you followed your passion and your curiosity, right in the middle of this deep learning process of the AI. Now you find yourself, in a way, right in the midst of this whole generated AI, the ChatGPT era. What are you going to do now in this area?
As I said, I think we're just scratching the surface in terms of what AI can do for society. And as a person who has experience building companies and selling companies and actually managing a very large group of people working on technology, and now as an investor / producer and helper, I would like to make sure that artificial intelligence technology does not just become a technology. It's just not an innovation that technologists are really happy about. I want this technology to fundamentally change the way we live, in the sense that I want this technology to help people reach their potential and actually lead lives that they would not have been able to live. I think the human brain and the humankind has great potential to do great things. And I hope that AI can be a very interesting and intriguing fuel for mankind to advance.
To unlock this potential that we have not used so far, or not
Absolutely.
fully used.
Not
so
fully
far.
utilized.
Well, I ardently hope that your vision of the future becomes reality.
Thank you.
And with that, I think our show is good for the day. And as for me, I'll be back next week with another globalist who is putting Korea on the map. Sun Jie out.